The early access beta for D4 just ended. During that time, I was able to level all 3 classes to the current max level of 25. In this video, I'm going to give my impressions for each of the classes and also general thoughts about the game so far. To start, the skill progression for all 3 classes were similar. You get access to several clusters of skills as you level up. There's the basic cluster, the core cluster, and then 3 clusters that are unique to each class. The unique clusters include defensive, mobility, utility, and additional offensive skills. You also get access to an ultimate cluster where you get to choose one powerful skill, which usually has a cooldown of 1 minute. While we could only get to the ultimate cluster because of the level cap during the beta, there is a final keystone cluster which provides powerful passive skills. When building your class, you are not forced into taking skills in specific clusters. You can choose to get multiple skills in specific clusters instead. The first class I leveled was Rogue. This turned out to be a good decision at the time since I had no point of comparison with the other classes. As a rogue, you can opt to use a combination of melee and range attacks, or focus on either just melee or ranged. The playstyle changes completely depending on which skills you choose. While leveling, I started with a melee-focused playstyle. However, it was difficult to pass on the guaranteed vulnerable debuff granted by Puncture. With core skills, I often swapped between Flurry, Barrage, Rapid Fire, and Penetrating Shot. Most of the time, however, I found myself using Penetrating Shot just for the consistent AoE damage. With Shadow Step and Dash, the rogue has a decent selection of mobility skills. Besides these skills, I mostly ran with Poison Trap and Poison Imbuement skills. Then, for the ultimate, I almost always used Shadow Clone since it seems to have the biggest potential to capitalize on the rogue's bursty playstyle. Next, the rogue gets access to 3 specializations: combo points at 15, inner sight at 20, and preparation at 30. If you've ever played World of Warcraft, then you already know what combo points are. Basically, you can build up to 3 combo points with basic skills, and then your core skills get a significant improvement based on the number of combo points you have. With Inner Sight, a random mob gets marked during combat, and each time you attack this marked target, you fill up the Inner Sight gauge. Once it's full, you get unlimited energy for 4 seconds. Since we were capped to level 25 during the beta, I could not test preparation. However, going by World of Warcraft logic, it likely has something to do with instantly resetting cooldowns, allowing you to spam ultimate skills. Compared to the Barbarian and the Sorcerer, the Rogue felt a lot weaker. That is until I changed my build to Twisting Blades and Shadow Step with combo points. There was an immediate improvement in power, even though I did not have the best legendary aspects on my Rogue. While there was a significant improvement in damage and mobility, the playstyle requires so much work and focus, so it's not an ideal playstyle if you just want to relax. The second class I leveled to 25 was the Barb. As a Barb main back in D2, I was optimistic about the class, but I also dreaded how it would feel in endgame due to how Barbs are basically support mains in D3. At the early levels, the Barb felt a lot slower compared to the Rogue. I initially went for Lunging Strike and Whirlwind, but I quickly changed builds once the Den Mother handed my ass to me for the nth time. I found immediate success after switching up to Frenzy and Upheaval. Unlike my experience with the Rogue, I was able to get multiple legendary aspects that had great synergy on the Barb. Once I got the Hammer of the Ancients aspect, and a few more that increased core damage, I was able to hit 4-digit numbers consistently. The Barb uses an arsenal system which I find is similar to weapon skills in WoW back in the day. Basically, the more you use a specific weapon type, the more powerful your skills are when using that particular weapon type. For example, ranks in two-handed bludgeoning weapon gives you a lucky hit bonus to generate additional fury when hitting an enemy. There are also major bonuses once your rank in a specific weapon type reaches 10. In addition, the arsenal system allows you to pick a specific weapon type to use on some skills. For example, you can specify either the two-handed bludgeoning weapon or the two-handed slashing weapon for the upheaval skill. If you don't pick a specific weapon, the arsenal system uses the highest DPS weapon allowed by the skill by default. This means you can potentially use a single weapon for damage while focusing on raw stats and bonuses for your other weapons. At level 15, the Barbarian gets an additional mechanic to the arsenal system called Technique. Unfortunately, we did not have access to the zone where we could unlock this system during the beta. Compared to the Rogue and the Sorc, I felt like the barb dealt the most damage. I could consistently hit for above 5k damage on Hota and even 8k on crits. I know that many are complaining about the barb during the beta, but these are whirlwind barbs. At this point in the game, whirlwind is extremely weak. Pick any other core skill and you are immediately 10 times better than any spin to win barb. In terms of mobility, barbs have leap, allowing you to jump long distances provided you get the right camera angle. Barbs are also very durable with multiple shouts to choose from, and iron skin. That said, my experience with the barb might be heavily skewed due to how lucky I got with my aspect combinations. The third class I leveled was the Sorc. If my experience with the barb was rough at the start, the experience was smooth with the Sorc from level 1 to 25. Unlike the Rogue and the Barb, I felt like most of the skills of the Sorc were viable. Being a mobile range class, it was easy to clear dungeons by putting down Hydras and Blizzards and then just teleporting around while throwing fireballs. My Sorc was also very lucky in that the first legendary I got gave me the ability to cast 2 Hydras, making leveling a complete joke. Compared to the Barb, the Sorc was not heavily reliant on good legendary aspects. Sure, they help when you get them, but the Sorc is already good from the start. At level 15, Sorcs get an enchant slot and another one at level 30. This system allows you to use non-ultimate active skills as enchantments, which provide bonus spell effects. For example, placing Fireball in your enchant slot causes monsters to explode on death, dealing 50% of Fireball's damage in an AoE. Compared to the Barb's arsenal and rogue specializations, I found the enchant system to be the best, allowing you to pick and choose enchantments for different situations. At this point, it seems like the Sorc is designed to have the highest floor but the lowest ceiling. Unfortunately, I was not able to test the Sorc on the world boss to see how it matched up with my experience on the Rogue and the Barb. Still, it looks like the Sorc has the potential to be great at both AoE clearing and single target damage due to the ability to layer multiple damage sources on top of one another. When it comes to the game itself, what we were shown in the beta, which is just Act 1, feels polished. The atmosphere is darker and more gothic, and fits better thematically compared to how the game looked vibrant at times in D3. Itemization feels good, especially when it comes to legendaries. You can extract an aspect, which is the legendary power, and transfer it to another item. You can only transfer a particular aspect once, however. If you want to enchant an item with the same aspect, you have to look for another legendary with the same power. Alternatively, you can enchant items with aspects that you unlock from completing dungeons. These, however, only apply the weakest version of the aspect available, encouraging you to farm legendaries with higher values. There are some things that I'm neutral on, like the UI, which some are describing as console or mobile looking. To me, the UI is functional, but if it can be improved, then that's good. Besides the UI, some people are complaining about class balance, like how rogues and barbarians pale in comparison to the Sorc. While I found this to be true to some degree, I won't make any judgments on class balance when we haven't seen what endgame looks like, how each of the classes feel at max level, how the paragon system works, and what unique items will bring to the table. Complexity, or the seemingly lack thereof, is also a concern that many people have. Personally, I don't share this concern. Diablo has always been a game where you create a character that focuses on one or two skills and then min-max your build around those. For those looking for true complexity, there's always Path of Exile. As for the negatives, my biggest concern is the design of the dungeons. Based on what I've seen, it seems like the dungeons all follow a formula. Each dungeon is split into either 3 or 2 areas. In the first area, you need to kill 2 mobs or find 2 objects to unlock the second area. Then, in the second area, you need to kill all the mobs or break 4 structures. If there is a third area, you just need to fight some boss. Dungeons are large in scale, which is great, but it can also be a problem, especially if you miss an objective and then have to backtrack all the way back. This is just annoying and can get old really fast. Finally, it's not a Blizzard game if there are no server issues. During the first day of the early access weekend, I got disconnected 5 times and had to reconnect. Each time, I had to wait in queue for around 2 hours. Given that this is a beta that was accessible only to those who pre-ordered the game or were given codes, it concerns me what the experience will be like in the upcoming open beta and possibly even in the launch that's scheduled for June. Despite all this, I am optimistic about the game's full release. I'm also looking forward to testing the Necromancer and the Druid, which becomes available in the next weekend. Overall, I would not rate D4 a 10 out of 10. It's a solid 8, and if Blizzard keeps their word and don't implement predatory monetization like in Diablo Immortal, then it can maybe be a 9 out of 10.